Congrats,
I'm
everybody.
so excited.
All of you, by the way. I want to see all your films. I can't look at a film right now because I literally turned over my film last Friday and I've been looking at it nonstop. I'm really excited about every film here. Like, I want to see everybody's work.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, IndieWire is celebrating our 25th Sundance, which is a very exciting thing to have happen around us, but it's also a partnership that we're doing for this event with Canada Goose, which is celebrating its 10 years as a sponsor of Sundance. And this is, with 2022, the fourth year that they've partnered with us in IndieWire, and our second virtual event that we've done with them after last year. Canada Goose has this amazing 60-year story, and I know they want to convey how much of that time has been spent keeping people warm on film sets. At least a few of you know how much that matters. The way in which Canada Goose has built this authentic relationship out of necessity is something that is not lost on anyone who's worn their gear on a set. And I have to say, from the IndieWire perspective, we can relate to that because we have a deep commitment to keeping filmmakers safe and sustainable in their professions in a way that has often come down to connecting at these early career stages. And we've held events like this for first-time filmmakers many times over the years. And one of the most exciting things about my job from where I sit is meeting people at this stage and then coming back to Sundance a year later, 2 years later, and seeing how things develop. So in a 1 minute period of time, tell us what your journey was to making your first feature.
The story of Hatching started when I was in speed meeting event for directors and screenwriters. And there I talked with our screenwriter, Ilja Rautsi. And he told me then that he has this one sentence idea in his mind that a boy hatches an evil doppelganger out of an egg. And he said that is all he knows so far. So I told him that it sounds very interesting, but let's change the lead character into a girl. And so we started to develop the whole story from this one sentence. And I thought that, okay, if somebody's hatching something, it means that this girl is trying to hide some elements in her character. And if there's hatching, so okay, there is something about motherhood and something about hatching, growing up. So all those themes, everything came from this one sentence.
You know, this story was definitely born from experience. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, was raised Southern Baptist, and, you know, asked a ton of questions all the time in Sunday school, after sermons, and found myself being met with, you know, a lot of resistance to those questions. And as I grew older, I realized that this resistance was a lot of the time sort of a mask or a protection of the people in power, and also that these people in power didn't always have folks' best interest in mind. I wanted to, more than anything, start a nuanced conversation where it's not just bashing or making fun of or like this indictment of a particular culture, because, you know, I myself had to come to this reckoning with my personal faith. While I did distance myself from it for a while, I sort of found this balance where I can both find like the significance and the beauty of it while also like critiquing it and calling bullshit when necessary.
That Exile started really in 2013 when Ben and I met in Christine Choi's infamous documentary production class at NYU. We clicked immediately creatively, and then Christine became our mentor for the rest of college. And when we graduated, we thought she is a documentarian who deserves her own documentary.
Yeah, and then that was around the time, shortly after we graduated, where Christine started talking to us about this unfinished project from 1989. And things just kind of moved on from there. I mean, when she introduced us to the footage that this film she'd never finished, it stood out to us right away what an incredibly important and complex moment that Christine had captured. And we thought, you know, what better way to tell the story of a documentarian than through a documentary project.
8-ish years on and off, chipping away at Nanny. I'm first-gen American, also born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, to Sierra Leonean parents. So I grew up in this eclectic African Southern microcosm. And growing up, my mom did a lot of domestic work, but in addition to other work, like she's self-published and she's owned a business, but the work that has mostly brought in income for her has been domestic. So caring for other people in their households. And I had a lot of resentment as someone who saw my mother put her own dreams to the side. And it's always interesting when I get the question, like, how did you come to this story? What research did you do? And I'm like, I lived this, like I'm not an anthropologist. This is my life. And initially I approached it as a straightforward drama. As I continued to hone my craft at NYU Grad Film and started to see like literally the visual manifestation of these nannies outside, these Black and brown women pushing white children in strollers outside of Tisch. Every time I ran into the building, I wanted to incorporate some West African folklore into the American horror paradigm. And so Nanny is a character study about a Senegalese nanny in New York City caring for a white child in Tribeca that incorporates supernatural and spiritual horror elements into the film.
Anisia and I, bonded while working on a film as actors that we were shooting in Senegal. Neptune Frost started being conceptualized then, primarily as we were learning about the phenomenon of e-waste camps across the continent where our tech goes to die, and then also the sourcing of the minerals that goes into all of our tech, coltan, cobalt. We started following artists who were coming out of these e-waste camps, recycling art from this. And that idea of recycling somehow connected us almost to the idea of like the birth of hip hop and how tech plays a role there, and the use or misuse of turntables and turntablism and all this stuff, and just thinking of this inventiveness and wanting to make that connection primarily between like drum as an ancient form of communication, coding, up through modern coding that allows us to communicate via, like we were communicating wirelessly through drums before, this Zoom platform arrived.
Eugene and I have known about the Free Chol story for quite a long time, about him and the movement. We both learned about it from the journalist in the film, K.W. Lee. He's an influential figure in both our lives. For me personally, I met him when I was 18 years old, and he's inspired me to become a journalist. When you meet somebody at that age who you find out is a Korean immigrant working at a mainstream paper, he covered the Jim Crow South, and his series of stories help trigger a landmark Asian American movement to free a wrongly convicted man from death row. You pay attention, and it actually changes your whole worldview and changes what you feel might be your purpose in life. We didn't really think to make a film about it until I attended the funeral of Chol Soo-lee, who died in 2014. And many of the people there were the activists who had led the movement to free him. And they were expressing deep regret that they didn't do enough for him, even though this was a 6-year movement. We've always been attracted to Asian American stories that are sort of complicated and nuanced. And so we just decided to dig in and excavate the story because we knew it was like too important not to be known, and it could have incredible impact and resonance, especially today. And so we set out on our journey, which has been 6 years. And 6 years is actually the length of the Free Chol Soo-lee movement. And so that is something that is not lost on us.
Maybe each of you could come up with just one word to describe the experience that you're having at Sundance.
Well, overwhelming, let's say that.
I'd say wild.
I'm gonna go with that. That's perfect.
Wow.
You may notice I don't like following directions, so I'm going to do 2. Virtually embracing.
Surreal. I didn't think it was going to happen.
I have a word. I don't know. Maybe you'll have a different one. Release.
Aloft and held up, not just by our team who brought us here, but by the community that this film is for.
You said a whole paragraph.
I know. Well, you started it, so I thought, you know what? I'm just gonna run with that.
Clearly, the rules were meant to be broken.